Hey, Graham Elwood here with Wisconsin edition of the Political Vigilante. So I wanted to talk about something since I'm here working in Appleton, Wisconsin at the Skyline Comedy Club. I wanted to find a story that was relevant that came out of Wisconsin, but is also points to everything we've been talking about on the show. So there was an article in the March 16th edition of the USA Today, but it's a reprint from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, written by Rick Barrett, and the article is entitled "Immigration Reform Could Put Dairy Farmers Out of Business." Now, I didn't know this. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, lived there till I was about 11 or so, and then moved to Chicago. But the article goes into that dairy farmers, and Wisconsin accounts for about a quarter of America's dairy production. California is number 2 with about 21%, according to this article. And they get a lot of immigrant workforce. I mean, their workforce is largely immigrants because they've tried to get jobs. They've tried to lure people from like Milwaukee and places that might have higher rates of unemployment, but people aren't willing to like move to some small farm out in the middle of nowhere, I guess. And so they're dependent upon migrant workers. And there's some great quotes in here from some of these dairy farmers who were like, whoa, wait a minute. And Wisconsin voted for Trump. Now, this article claims that Trump won big in farm country. Well, yeah, he barely won the state, but that's another topic. So anyway, but Wisconsin did vote for Trump. And I'm sure many of the people that voted were like, yeah, immigration reform. And as I've talked about before, when I talked about the ranchers in Texas and other places, tourism is down. The immigration reform, it's too simplistic and it's too much a part of our economy. Somebody responded to I did a whole, if you're new to this show, I did last month a video on how the immigration and the ban with Mexico and stuff like that is hurting cattle ranchers in Texas. Someone responded, but Trump is helping the oil workers in Texas. That's not surprising. But so this article is pretty interesting. Again, I didn't know this, and it's something we all should know because it shows you the complexities of this stuff, and you can't make quick campaign slogan-y, short-sighted policy because it affects a lot of people. So here is what it talks about. So the realities of Trump's presidency are sinking in, said John Rosenow, a Buffalo County dairy farmer who milks about 500 cows at Rolsom Wolf Dairy here and has employees from Mexico. Rosenow has become an outspoken advocate for comprehensive immigration reform nationally because it's needed to provide a stable, secure dairy workforce. He's worried about the president's call to deport millions of undocumented workers. Trump said in his campaign he was going to do all this stuff, Rosenow said, but by some estimates, this article claims up to 80% of hired help on large Wisconsin dairy operations is immigrant labor, and a large percentage of those workers are undocumented. That's huge. You can't just upend your work. But that's the thing. I remember when they were talking about we're going to round all the illegals up. Like a lot of companies are making a lot of money off of immigrant labor because they can pay them less. Without the foreign-born help, many farmers said they would be forced to quit milking cows because not enough other people are willing to accept such physically demanding jobs for $13 an hour. If you remove Mexican labor, farms would go out of business. That's a given, Rosenow said. Apple orchard owners and strawberry farmers have echoed the same sentiment, saying their fruit could rot in the fields. So here's something interesting that happened, why this shouldn't come as a shock. Several years ago, Georgia passed a law, and they said we're going to round up all the illegals, and all the illegals then split and left all their farms, and they lost millions of dollars in crops because there was nobody there to work the fields. So this is something to think about. Now, it also says in the article, some California vegetable growers are experimenting with technology to harvest lettuce and spinach, but they must plant rows that are mathematically precise and have lettuce heads. So they're trying to do it. They're trying to go to automation as one solution, but that's the solution that they're looking for a lot of labor. And also with the article goes into, with a dairy farm, you need a human being to check the health of the animal. If you're getting cow's milk, you need to, it's not just like you can just robotically pick an orange or something like that. You need somebody there to do all this stuff with a dairy farm, which is important. And I don't know how you can get around that and automate that. Maybe you can, I don't know. But Rosenau goes, the dairy farmer said a significant number of Western Wisconsin neighbors who don't employ immigrants probably would want the government to deport undocumented workers, citing Trump's pledge to end illegal immigration. But it's not their business on the line, which is, you know, and this is also in the article, it says here, talking about the Wisconsin overall workforce and the details of this. Wisconsin workforce now is shrinking rather than growing, especially in some northern counties, said Mike Taylor, chairman of the Governor Council on Workforce Investment and president of the OEM Fabricators in Woodville, Wisconsin. New farmers say they've tried recruiting from the big cities, but that just hasn't worked, said Jason Vorpal, owner of Rockland Dairy near Random Lake, Wisconsin. Quote, we need some way to keep our immigrant labor force that's here intact. I'm okay with deporting the felons, and I'm okay with deporting people who are looking for a handout and aren't working. But I am not okay with deporting the hardworking, tax-paying immigrants who are here right now, who employs 26 people. And a vast majority of these immigrants aren't concerned with becoming citizens. They just want to be able to come here and work, said Paul Pizzer, a dairy farmer in Elwood, Wisconsin, with 26 employees. It's, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? America has been built on an immigrant workforce. First, it was built with slaves. We had literally slave labor. And then you had an immigrant workforce. You had the Chinese, you had the Irish. They helped build the railroads. You've always had people coming here from a country that is more impoverished and there's easy work to do. So the immigrants have always wanted to do the jobs that everyone else doesn't want to do. I've seen it all over the country. There's pockets of whatever that, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the 80s in Chicago, there was a lot of Eastern Europeans because of everything that was going on in Poland and Russia. So there was a lot of Poles, and they were doing a lot of the manual labor. Then Latinos came up. Like, we've always needed this in America, and this is an example, you know. So, quote, if we paid people $20 an hour, we may just price ourselves out of business. In fact, we would, said Shelley Mayer, a dairy farmer from Singer, Wisconsin, and executive director of professional dairy producers in Wisconsin. That's how the article ends. What are you going to do? There's a bigger issue here. I agree. If there's felons in this country, of course. But if we're going to round them up, let's round up all the felons in the banking and oil industry. Let's round them up too. I'd like to see those assholes in orange jumpsuits. Oh, so like this, subscribe to it, and there's a Patreon, the link to the article I'm going to put below, and there's a Patreon link that will help support independent media, guys. Nobody is telling me what to do. Nobody's telling me what I can and cannot talk about. Just because I'm reading articles from these newspapers doesn't mean they're paying me or giving me anything. They're not paying me at all. You guys are paying me. So I'll keep talking about what you want to talk about. Thank you.